And we're back. After a bit of a break of, what is it now, 3 weeks, we came back to record a new episode for the Better Together podcast.
And let us tell you that it has been very transformative, very eventful couple of weeks. And we almost decided to stop the podcast. What? Yeah.
We had now 31 episodes so far. It's incredible. And now, because of this transformative time, but also because we didn't continue them, I felt like, should we just fade it out? Not sure the goals anymore, why we should continue. Because we started out with, we're going to learn how to properly podcast and properly speak, which I didn't get there yet. But and so now those goals changed. And now we need to reiterate why we do this.
Exactly. And also we discovered a lot of things about ourselves and our relationship during this time that led us to question if the podcast was still a fit for our relationship and as our professional life as well. So in this podcast, what we will talk about is give you a brief briefing of what has happened during these weeks and what was our reasoning when we wanted to stop, but what kept us coming back. Okay, spoiler alert, we're back. So this podcast is still around. And let's get started. Do you want to share what you did a little bit?
Yeah, which is, I guess, was one of the initiators of this transformative time, that I went on to a 10-day retreat or camp. It's called Iron John. And it was for 10 days, sort of in the forest, an hour away from Berlin. And we were there with around 40 men, just men in the forest doing transformative stuff. And we were doing a lot of different workshops, a lot of different ceremonies that I'm going to share a bit more, but that in the end led to me being very different when we first met each other again. Being more independent, more distant, one could say, but also a very different feel of my personality. And it's really hard to put this in words as I notice right now. But it was transformative in the way that I felt like I got a better direction, a better knowing of myself, and I could really test myself against a lot of different people in that safe space. And that was very, very helpful to learn, to grow, to connect with others, and create a really awesome bond with some people.
Mm-hmm. Can you share a bit of the transformative practices that took place?
Yes, some of them. So one part that was really, really helpful for me was the openness and the connection with other men, which is, I guess, usually not that practiced in everyday life. And there you have this space where only men are, and you're doing those 30-second hugs every morning, and you're doing those deep conversations with anyone you meet there. Everybody was very open to talk about any subject. So it was very, very free. Everything from any business opportunity to all the sex stories that one ever had. So everything completely the open range to everything that you can imagine. And no topic was really taboo, which was really awesome. And then it was completely self-organized camp for 10 days. So there was one person who was organizing that there's food, one person per day who was cooking, one person who was checking the wood, but it was all just self-organized on the place or at the place.
The wood because there was a campfire.
Yes, every day there was campfire. I mean, if that's not transformative, I don't know. There was campfire every single day. That was awesome. And we had that in the evenings, we had those fire talks, which were essentially you could bring a topic forth that you were struggling with, and they could share with 40 other men, and they could bring some of their opinions in there. They could help. They could give you suggestions. And so that alone is already, I think, really awesome. Not only the person who's asking there is learning, but probably everybody around, because everybody has, in a way, similar topics that they deal with. And so it was a very deep experience and deep into learning what you see as who you are, what maybe the role as a man that you have is, that how you see that other people are doing that. And also just you could try out everything, because a lot of the activities there were also workshops that were given by the participants. And so whatever you were feeling like you would want to share with other people, you like, or you think they would benefit from it, you could just give a workshop about an hour or two about this. And I went to a couple of them, and they were great, and they're quite often spontaneous, and people were just like 10, 20 people were there, and you could just do anything, and people were so open to try out things.
So, for example, Osho meditation.
Yeah, there was Osho, the 1 hour meditation. There was a philosophy workshop. There was a constellation. There was meditation. Cacao ceremony was there. So yeah, a lot of different activities. I want to share all of it. But yeah, a lot of really transformative things were happening.
Okay. What did you go into? Like, what was your intention going into?
I wanted to explore more the masculine energy in a way, because I felt I was growing up with my mom more dominantly being in the role of bringing me up, and my sister as well. And so in a way I felt like very feminine in a way. Also the job of psychologist is more feminine than masculine. And then I was like, okay, that's I think a cool opportunity to try that out, to learn about myself, to also deepen my bond with other men and see how that is. And really getting out of my comfort zone in terms of physical things. Because I was always like stepping back when it comes to competition or something like that. Most of the time because of fear failing or something like that. So there was a space where you could just try it out. And maybe also taking some more responsibility for myself and some ownership.
Mm-hmm. So ownership, exploring masculinity, and challenging yourself. Yeah. Okay. Did you fulfill those desires?
Yeah, for sure. There were some awesome opportunities to discover physical strength, but also mental strength. In competition with others, there was the self-ownership because there was everything was up to you, what you were doing. And you could, as long as nobody was complaining, you could do anything you wanted. And so that was very freeing. And also everybody else was just doing their thing. And overall, it was very freeing to explore really what you like, what's important to you, what the masculine energy is, because everybody was also open to explore that. And overall, I achieved all of them.
Mm.
Yeah. Not knowing in the moment, it was, I didn't get anything. Like I was just in there. But afterwards, now it all makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to share like one big insight that you got?
Before, I was quite often doubting whether I can just follow my own decisions or whether it's like entangled with the other person just because I'm people pleasing and not really standing in for what I think is right or what really fits me. And probably you can say that now about me as well, that changed quite a bit. That when I notice something is not going right, I'm a lot more direct in saying if that's not according to what I think is good for me or at the moment, not working well, or just stating my opinion to a certain topic. That's a lot easier and I'm a lot more confident about it. And so with that, which we come probably back in the relationship part, created a lot more change. A lot of change in all directions, but especially in the one of freedom and independence.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And I can attest to that you have a lot of opinions now.
Thanks.
Which is nice. It's nice. I like having a sparring partner every now and then to bounce ideas off, but with not just building up on things, but also questioning. I think that's a noticeable change.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
But how was it afterwards? Because that was 10 days, and then afterwards there was a bit of integration time.
Yeah. Afterwards, I was still visiting a friend of mine in Berlin. Also, just essentially him, his girlfriend, and me living there on the couch. So I still had a lot of time just for myself and to integrate, and it really trickled down slowly. That even in the week afterwards, I had one insight after another. Also, it wasn't really all at once. I suddenly knew it's slowly being integrated now, because there was so much at once that I didn't really get to integrate at the place, at the camp. And now still it's happening that I'm slowly integrating, but I noticed immediately that I'm in the one-on-one interaction but also in the group, feel a lot more just relaxed and confident. And this is so much freedom coming through that. So I could immediately test that with him, because I noticed how I was before with him.
With your friend?
With my friend. And so it was nice to don't get thrown back into the real world with work and stuff right after the retreat, because I know from other people who just did that the next Monday. They just went off to their 9-to-5 job and got lost completely back into their old patterns. And so I'm very grateful for having had the time to explore this a little bit further in a more chill and relaxed environment.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I can share a bit of my journey.
Please.
So when Julian was going on the retreat, it's weird to talk about you in third person. I made a trip to the Netherlands, and I made arrangements with a couple of friends to stay with them. They happen to be all women and all going through stuff. And I wasn't the exception, because I was going through a lot. So the first day when Julian left, it was the first night I was sleeping alone for a long time. And I noticed that being alone in the dark, it's actually quite scary for me. As a grown-ass woman, I'm still afraid of the dark. It's not just the dark, it's more like ghosts. I'm afraid of ghosts. So my mind comes up with this images that I could see, or these things that could happen in the darkness that just make me trip balls, and then I get really scared, and it's like I get uneasy. It's hard for me to fall asleep. So I noticed that on the first day. I was already jumping in to this crazy world of things that I hadn't discovered, because you were always there to buffer the world. When I say you, it's Julian. Okay, just for future reference.
You, the audience.
You, the audience. You were there for me. And that's actually one of the first realizations that I had, that I want to do a darkness retreat, darkness retreat is basically you go into a cave for 4 or 5 days to 10 days, depending on how badass you are.
Crazy you are.
And then it's absolute pitch black darkness. And it's just you and your thoughts and whatever your mind comes up with. So that's when I made the decision that I need to confront my fear of ghosts. So that's the first thing that came up. Very chill. And then on the second day, I already started feeling, because you went radio silent, I already started feeling uneasy and that I was missing you a lot. And I was like, is this normal? And it was just weird. And I remember my intention going into this period of time where we were going to be apart, which was in total 2.5 weeks. My intention was to let anything toxic from our relationship to fall apart, to fall away. So bring it to the light and then just let it go. And that was interesting, because the first couple of days I realized how entangled we were, because we've been traveling nonstop for 1.5 years, not sleeping one night apart, just a couple nights in Peru, but that was it. And it was hard. In the beginning, it was very hard for me to self-regulate and have my identity not as a unit of the partnership, but as myself. And it was also a journey of independence for me. And I went on the third day or the second day already to the Netherlands with my like the first friend that I was going to hang out with. And then is when my mind actually started creating all of these stories around the retreat of Julian. And it was confusing, because I had some evidence that he had changed already. So I could see that he was more distant, that he was not responding messages, he was not available as usual. And I could also see how much I leaned on him for support and safety. So around the third day, we had a call, and I talked to a completely different person. It was a bro Julian. It was, in my interpretation, it was a Julian that had a completely different slang, like a deeper voice. He was more directive. He was changed, a changed person. And I was like, who the fuck is this dude? And in that moment, I freaked out, and I realized I couldn't lean on Julian for that safety or that comfort. And then sort of the tables turned on me. And that's when I started creating stories in my head. Okay, he's just with this group of men, and then they're just like not giving a shit about the world outside and whatever. And also he's merging with the crowd. Very unhelpful thoughts that with the friend that I was talking to, like, they just made sense. She was like, yeah, I can see that, yeah. So that added fuel to the fire of this story that I was crafting in my head. And by day 5, like I was having a shit time in the first couple of days. And by day 5, I was realizing that I needed to separate myself from Julian. I was like, okay, I cannot do this individuation process, this independence, this self-reliance, if I am still looking at him for safety. So my goal from then on was to find the safety within. And I started going on a deeper journey of, okay, what makes me look for all of this safety in a partner? Can I create that for myself? Where are we just depending on each other way too much? And I noticed like my circle was small, and I actually had a lot of roles in my life fulfilled by Julian. So I started leaning on friends more, and I started going within. And then let's say that during that time I was also having fun. I was hanging out with this friend that I hadn't seen for a while. And we even made a makeover of her backyard, made it really pretty. We went shopping. I loved the sign. I loved different things. And so it was my chance to have fun while being slightly miserable 100% of the time. And that was okay. Because I'm a person that appreciates when life is not going perfect, because I know that on the flip side of the suffering, there's a learning. And at day 7 or 8, I went to my second friend. And this is my best friend for the last couple of years. I met her in the Netherlands. And I was going to stay with her for a week as well. And since the moment that I arrived, we were triggering each other. She also had been without her boyfriend for 3 weeks, or 2 weeks by then. And we were both going on a journey of being self-reliant and really understanding what it means to be a woman standing on your own. And we were triggering the shit out of each other because we were both vulnerable, and it was in a tricky situation. Nobody could hold the space for the other. So the first day was all about triggers. The second day we decided to have a conflict. And I actually brought it up and I said, okay, I cannot take this any longer. We are just silently hating each other. Let's just make it explicit. What's the shit? What needs to come out? So we started just blurting out all of the preconceptions and judgments we had about the other person in the most vulnerable place that we had been in a long time. And we both had to build walls up to have that conversation, because we said hurtful things to each other. Not below the belt, but we were saying, judgments. And in that moment, I started feeling distant and alone. And I started going down a spiral of darkness, because mind you that I had broken up with my boyfriend in my head.
She did not tell me that.
He didn't find out until later. It was just a test run, you know? I needed to make it happen, to go through all of the things that I went through afterwards. I was fully trusting the process. I guess that's the thing that kept me on the path of continuing to go deep into the shithole. And then I was having this fight with this friend, and I went alone, and then we separated after the conflict. Each went on their own way, and I was going dark. And it was very, very tricky to navigate, because in 1 week or maybe 10 days, I had lost my boyfriend and my best friend. And then I realized that I had this pattern that when somebody acts a little bit different than what they usually act, I make the jump in my mind that they have become a stranger, that I cannot trust them any longer, that all the memories that I have with that person disappear, and it's just here and now. This person is not safe, and we need to cut ties. They need to be gone. And I realized I was doing that, but where I turn people that are close to me into strangers, and then all of a sudden I'm alone. And I went down, and it was so dark, so painful, so lonely. And around that time, we had our first call with Julian. We scheduled a call. And in that call, I was just in such a bad place. It was bananas. So basically we went over the retreat and all the things that had gone wrong along the way in our communication, all the things that we had, all the patterns that we have in the relationship that were not healthy, and a lot of other conflict, tricky things were said. And after that call, I felt a little bit better, because Julian was very convinced that we didn't break up. And in that moment, I was actually, the world that I created for myself, where I lose my boyfriend and my best friend in a week, is too bad to be true. This is too bad to be true. I feel too shitty to be in a reality that's the truth. And that's when things shifted. And I started seeing the stories that I was telling myself and the world that I was creating for myself, and that my mind alone, well, with a little bit of fuel from other sources of people that were telling me, like, tell your friend to fuck off. Yeah, of course, you were always codependent with your boyfriend. I was like, why didn't anybody tell me this before? So then I was just, what the fuck? And fueling that story in my head. And in that moment I was like, okay, no, let's calm down for a second. And let's start connecting with what feels true. And that's when I flipped a switch. And then slowly but surely, things started shifting within me. And I had a big revelation on like the next day. It was a transformative day. And then afterwards, where I really connected to my internal power, I was grounding as a motherfucker, and I was connecting with safety in a way that I never felt before. A safety that was coming from within. And I was so steady that it was unwavering. And I was like, I didn't know I could feel this. And afterwards, because I didn't want to stay with my best friend, we were still triggering the shit out of each other. I went with another friend I had in the city, and then I just stayed in her place, which was such a safe haven. Because she was working, she's an adult, a proper adult, so she was just doing her work, and we were having dinner together, but it was really calming coming from those previous days where I was living a very hectic life. And that's when the insights started to settle. And I woke up in the middle of the night, understanding everything that had happened, and with a very deeply spiritual experience where I was connecting to my heart like never before. And I became this strong woman, like a strong, independent woman, because I always joke that I was a strong, dependent woman. And that moment was like, this is how it feels like to be independent, to follow the path that I think is the right path for me, and then invite other people along the way. But have as a compass what my soul wants to fulfill in this lifetime. And that's what happened then. And I really, I marinated in it. I loved it, because I knew that when you go through so much shit, what's on the other side is equally, like, as it was shitty, it's transformative and wonderful. So it made me recalibrate everything that I'm doing in my life. And it gave me a lot of clarity of how I want to operate in the relationship moving forward, and the person that I want to become. Then I had a couple of days to settle in that. And then we had another call with Julian, in which my energy was so ridiculously different that I think Julian just thought that I went insane.
Yes.
When you give your thoughts on it, on the second call.
Well, the first one we kind of almost continuously were crying and then trashing our relationship and what all the patterns that we had and how bad it all was. And you were tiny, you were crying, you were weak, and how much the 2 weeks destroyed you. And then on the other call,
2 days later, mind you.
Yeah. 2 days later, she sat there, shoulders back, looked at me, and we were just, the first moment, just like noticing what kind of different energy you had, and like, you know, just, I think we sat in silence, like, oh wow, I noticed, like, okay, you're different. And then there was one point that I remember, which was, I was sharing something that, my opinion, oh, I think I did it for that reason. And then you were like, nope, fuck you. You're not gaslighting me. I'm like, wait, I was just cheer. Okay, but I guess she is a different person now. She had completely different energy. And you were just, I don't know. I really didn't know who you were at that point because you were shifting so drastically from one person that was weak and tiny and felt destroyed from me and was in the victim role. And then the other woman, I don't know who that was, the other woman who was a complete power woman, completely self-confident, felt super strong and didn't let anyone say anything about her that she didn't like. I was like, oh. And then in the end, you were all time talking about the queen within you and the queendom.
Awakening the archetype of the queen.
Yeah. And then in the end, you were like, and you know what a queen needs? A king. What the fuck is this now? Like I don't know, it felt like a super deep and strong voice that you were saying it with 100% confidence. And I was like, wait, what?
I didn't say that for
this. What is a king? What doesn't the king need to do? Am I the king? Then the 2 days later until we met, after that call, until we met, I was completely confused of like, who is that woman? Felt completely dead, was throwing shit at me, was in the victim role, and then the other person just being 100% confident about everything and just like, I'm not gonna let anyone say anything about me. It's like, okay, let's calibrate on that when we see each other.
It's interesting how you see it though. I didn't feel like that. I felt that I was strong and yeah, it's like my bad bitch face. That's what I was actually joking with my friends. It's like, oh, this is a bad bitch face. But it still feels that it's in relationship, but not too crazy, but yeah, I guess that was perceived.
And I was also already like still pumped from the retreat, and I was very confident and very independent as well. And yet you were like trumping me there. It's like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah. What happened was I met my shadows in the darkest of places. I just descended into hell. And I was like, okay, let's hang out with my demons for a second. And let's look at what's in here. Where does this come from? Where did this start? And what's triggering it right now? And that gave me a wholesomeness that I couldn't have had if I didn't interact with my demons in such a friendly way. Curious. I was very curious. I stopped being afraid because it's a really dark place to go. But if you go there knowing that you'll get out of it, it's also important. It's important for transformation. So I just did that voluntarily. And then afterwards, I was integrating my shadows and I was not shying away from them. And I think that came out as the bad bitch. But it was more like, yeah, I'm not going to let other people's stories define my own story. I guess that's the distinction that you need to mention. And yeah, afterwards, when we met, which was the next day at night after this call.
Oh, there was one. Oh, true. Yeah.
It was on Thursday the call, and on Friday night we met. Then I was getting off the bus and I saw Julian, and he, like, I couldn't recognize him. Like, I couldn't recognize the person. Maybe physically it was similar, but energetically it felt like it was a completely different person.
Same, by the way. You were completely different too.
Yeah. And then we just like hugged, and it was like hugging a stranger. We were like, who the fuck? And we were driving back in the car and just looking at each other and being like, this is weird. This is weird. this is like, is it gonna last forever? Like, why are we so weird? It was absolute strangers. Like, we energetically, we would hold hands for a second and be like, no, this is too weird. This is too weird. This is really weird. Why are you holding my hand? You're a stranger. I just met you. So yeah, that was a very interesting thing to go through. And in the end, we decided to give it some time and to give it some space.
To talk a lot.
And then we started recalibrating. We started talking about the things that had hurt us from those interactions. We started letting go of some things. We started clarifying new things, new terms for our relationship, which we can talk to you about in another episode, about how we transformed from a codependent couple to an independent couple. And all of that happened, the following weekend. It's still happening now. We're still recalibrating, but it feels that we're a bit more normal. And now to the podcast. Like, because after this time, we were like, everything we do together is up for questioning. We realized that we were each other's therapists, business coach, nurse, physiotherapist, accountability buddy. Like, we had so many roles that we were playing in each other's lives. And then we were like, we need to outsource those. We need to like have other people in the circle. Yeah. I need to have a business coach. I need to have a therapist that I can talk to when my mind goes bananas. It was very humbling, by the way, to see like how much you could spin a story until it becomes the reality. And yeah, having a therapist, not being extra codependent. And that was where the podcast came up as well, because have the podcast as a joint project.
There was sort of an accountability thing as well, that you wanted to practice your speaking, I wanted to practice hosting a podcast. And so, hey, let's do this together as well, because we don't do enough together yet, except 24 hours a day. And so this was obviously up for question as well. And to the conclusion that we came was that we needed to redefine the goals around it, because also you're pretty good at speaking now. I'm not better at podcast hosting, but it's fine. And that those goals that we had before were not there anymore, not enough. And so now what came through, what was still important to us, was the space where we can share insights, where new things maybe even develop, and this consistent output of our ideas that keeps us on the top of our game, and also makes us those learnings that we have, those insights, more concise, and we know better what happens. And also like having a track record of all the things that are happening along the line in the last year, which is very nice.
Yeah.
And so, that's our goals now.
Yeah. And it felt, it was very clear energetically, like in my body. I really connected with my body in this time. And then when like one of the first days you were having a situation with your mom, and then I was going into the therapist role, and I was like, oh no, that feels so wrong. And then it happened with a couple more situations where it was like, this doesn't feel like energetically in my body, it doesn't feel right. But then when we were like, okay, what about the podcast? Do we continue or not? And in my body, it felt like we were not done with podcasts, that there was something else that the podcast was bringing to our lives. Not just the goals, not just the objectives that we had, but also something that was emerging from the podcast itself, which is a nice energy or insights that when you're sitting with a microphone in your face, you just allow yourself to have. And we listened to that, and then we decided to continue. We won't post every week anymore. We will do it every 2 weeks for the next months, and see if that wants to continue or if we want to go back to one every week. But
So I'm sorry for the hardcore listeners.
The hardcore listeners.
For the 1,000 true fans, you know.
Yes.
For all the backup that we have. Sorry for that.
Yes. We'll still be around and we will still share our life and our insights. And that's what we wanted to share with you. Why we went off grid. We didn't go off grid, but we went radio silent. And why did we decide to come back? There you go. There you have it. You're in our inner circle.
Yes.
You know our secrets.
And you're probably one of the first 1,000 true followers that we have. And so, thank you so much for listening. That you followed through until the end. Because that means something. And something, I guess. And yeah, that was the most important thing that we wanted to share from our huge story and why and how we continue.
Exactly. If you have any thoughts, if we triggered any thinking, or if you want to shout out and say, same, I had the same, please feel free to reach out to us. We love when our journey resonates with other people. And yeah, until next time, see you and thank you for listening.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.